Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Beagle,
He's here tonight.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Present.
Councilmember Behrman,
Present.
Councilmember Gotchel,
Here.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox, Councilmember Sharp,
Present.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions to the agenda tonight is presented. City Manager,
Mayor have none.
any from the dais? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item of business, which is the approval of minutes. We've got two sets of minutes to approve tonight. The first is the City Council goal-setting meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Any questions, comments, additions, deletions? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the City Council goal-setting meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2023. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. The next is the regular City Council meeting minutes of March 28th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support. I got a motion and support. Any corrections, additions, deletions, those? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the regular City Council meeting minutes of March 28th, 2023. All those in the public, the rules to the call to the public are as follows. The public shall address the council during call to the public. What shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and then immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council. And all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the first call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the first call to the public. Move on to City Manager's reports. We have two reports tonight. The first is the Fire Monthly Report from February 2023. Any questions for Chief Giesler? Deputy Mayor Resnick?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Kiesler, I noticed in the report that the change in hazardous condition calls went from 1 to 23. What constitutes the hazardous condition calls?
So that would be significantly from our wires down incidents
Oh, okay.
of the winter storm that we had.
So those are weather related. Okay.
Typically it's a weather related, which not necessarily, but most of the time it is.
Okay. That was it.
All right. Thank you. Very good. That's my question too. Councilmember Behrman.
Not necessarily to his report, but I did notice the training station behind the fire station had a bunch of caution tape around it. There's something wrong with it we need to do with that?
I believe it was just to keep people off the ladder during one of the events that we had at the station.
Oh, okay. I just wasn't sure if there was something.
Nope.
Okay.
Just that.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely.
Anybody else? All right. Very good. Thank you. Next up is the Police Monthly Report for February 2023. Any questions for Chief Langmeyer? I have one real quick. Under fraud, forgery, embezzlement, it went up pretty significant. Is there?
It did. I'll let you know that I looked at each and every one of those cases that happened last month just to see what was going on. It's a lot of different things. I'm proud to say that we've got charges pending on 3 of those different cases, which is a good thing. But they're all over the place. Some are credit card frauds, some are online scams. There were 2 online scams that people fell for. Just all kinds of different things that were going on. Nothing specific that happened.
All right. Very good. Just caught my eye.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
Support.
All right, I got a motion and a support to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Moves us on to unfinished business. We have one item of unfinished business tonight, and that's the recommendation to approve the enactment and adoption of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances for the City of Wixom, Title 18, Zoning Chapter 18.07, Village Center Area District, Sections 18.7.010 through 18.07.090, and to rezone all parcels currently zoned Village Center Area to Village Center Area Core, Village Center Area Transitional, or Village Center Area Low Intensity as recommended by the Planning Commission. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Assistant City Manager Benson.
Thank you and good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. You may recall this item from our last meeting on March 28th, where you all approved the first reading of the revised Village Center Area Ordinance and associated rezonings. I won't belabor the point. There are a variety of, I would say, significant changes. This became a rewrite of the ordinance in total between all of the various changes that were made. We've been through numerous kind of review steps, so I won't go through what all of those changes were. At the last meeting, there you all did vote to change the minimum unit sizes. That was pretty much that was the most recent change that happened. With those changes incorporated and the first reading completed, should City Council approve the second reading and adoption, we can then move forward with publishing the revised zoning map that would rezone the 600 plus parcels within the current VCA zoning district, as well as publish the updated ordinance regulations associated with that. With that, if there are any additional questions, I'm happy to address them.
Very good. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. In going over this again since the last few meetings that this has been discussed and looking at the map, as it relates to the low density area and the mixed unit minimum size requirement that has been discussed, where do we foresee mixed use going in anywhere that's red? I mean, most of that is all the Tribute and Lana Estates and what is the horse farm now, pending whatever happens with that development proposal. Do we actually see mixed use at any other spot?
No, I mean, it really, actually the way that this ordinance division will play out is actually mixed use really isn't a possibility in the low intensity district. Your primary uses will be detached single family on relatively small lots, I believe 5,000 square foot minimums with the associated minimum unit size, or attached single family, so things like townhomes, but I'll say at a lower density than in the transitional district, are possible as a special land use through the Planning Commission. I would not anticipate any commercial or kind of retail uses up in that area. There is one 13-acre parcel as well as two kind of sets of 5 acreage parcels that could be combined to something of relative significance, probably the 6 to 8 acre range, but those will likely end up as, again, either that single family or some form of attached single family in the low intensity district.
And attached wouldn't qualify under the flex space housing and live work, correct?
Correct. Yes, that's only in the VCA core zoning designation.
So is there a point then in allowing mixed use within the low density? I mean, I know in the previous meetings we've discussed square footages, but the use altogether, if we don't foresee an opportunity for it to even be there, do we truly need to limit it?
I don't believe it is permitted.
That's what we set the minimum for last meeting, though. That's what was.
No. So looking at the schedule of uses for the low intensity district, which is the first of the 4 columns on page 5 of the draft ordinance, while it is permitted to have dwellings and workshop spaces above garages, everything from dwellings within mixed-use buildings are not permitted, flex space is not permitted, senior housing, apartments and or senior independent living is not permitted, everything down to 2-family dwellings or duplexes are not permitted in the low intensity district. Mixed-use dwellings within mixed-use buildings are permitted in the transitional and the core sub-areas. Again, probably related to acreage limits, but not in the low-intensity district.
And what was the minimum for that was set?
The minimum unit size, so what is the minimum residential unit size that a single-family home or a townhouse can be in that district?
All right, in the other portions, so in the core and in transition, those square footages that were voted on at the last meeting show up there. And then we're saying for the low density, it's not there because it's not permitted.
Well, there is the minimum unit sizes in that, but it's not specifically broken out for mixed-use developments because, no, it is not permitted. Correct.
Yeah, the whole flex space live work section has gone from low density, but I'm not noticing anywhere in the actual section, that section, let me get to C, BCA low density sub area specific requirements, then with all the wording, one family attached dwellings or townhouse dwelling, I'm not seeing anywhere within that it specifically states the minimum that was voted on. So it's in our packet as this is what was approved, and it might be in a chart, but in every other section in the actual text, it says flex area minimum for core 600, flex area minimum for transition this. Then when we get to the low density, since the flex area isn't permitted and that section's removed entirely from the body of the text, there's no minimum stated. So shouldn't we have it somewhere in there as it is with the other ones stating it, or is it in a chart somewhere that we're just gonna rely on that? It's more making sure that this is clear to everyone situation. So right now it isn't, because it doesn't state it specifically.
It doesn't state that flex spaces are not permitted in the low intensity.
So if you go to the bottom of page 22, it's section C, BCA low density sub area specific requirements. That matches the core and the transition text, but in the core and the transition text, it states those minimums for flex and whatnot. And so that applies to minimums total, but last meeting was approved a minimum for this. There's nowhere in section C that says minimum dwelling size, X square feet.
Yes, if you look on page, it's C7 on page 23.
900, okay. So written on, all right, 960. All right, I guess that was confusion, is all the other sections have numerical probably.
I apologize. That is probably my fault. I was the one who wrote that in.
Yeah, that's why it stands out more. You look through and it's 900 this, 600 that, and okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right.
So seeing no other questions, I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve the enactment of and adoption, of an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances for the City of Wixom, Title 18, Zoning, Chapter 18.07, Village Center Area District, Sections 18.07.010 through 18.07.090, and rezone all parcels currently zoned Village Center Area to Village Center Area Core, Village Center Area Transitional, or Village Center Area Low Intensity, as recommended by the Planning Commission. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That includes the unfinished business portion of the meeting. We'll move on to the first item under new business, and that is the submittal of the city manager's proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 budget and setting May 23rd, 2023 as the date of public hearing regarding the budget. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Very good. Mr. Stamper.
you want me to go ahead?
No, just go right ahead.
Okay. Tonight, in accordance with city charter, we come here with the proposed budget for the fiscal year 23-24. And we're also looking to set the public hearing date for May 23rd, 2023, which is the last council meeting in May. So we'll go through a few highlights from the budget that is sitting in front of you. You should have a copy of the highlight document in addition to your budget binders. The first information provided is where we stand with our taxable values for this coming fiscal year. They're estimated to increase 9.45%, which consists of residential property up 9.23%, commercial and industrial property up 15.77%, personal property down 8.26%, and IFT tax down 4.45%. And the main reduction for personal property is due to the industrial manufacturing property has now completely phased out of the tax roll, which is now being reported directly to the state, and we receive that supplement income from the local community stabilization authority, which this year we estimate at about $320,000. So pretty good news on the side of taxable values. The composition of the city's tax base continues to be well balanced between 44.62% commercial and industrial, 42.92% residential, 11.21% personal, and 1.25% industrial facility tax. The budget being submitted proposes to remain at the same millage rate we were in the current year at 11.8821. We did not experience a Headley rollback this year. Below is a snapshot of the levied millage rates dating back to 2018-19 and comparing it to today's millage rate. When we do the comparison of the 31 cities in Oakland County, typically we've been coming in at 8th lowest. This year, we compare it 7th lowest, with cities ranging from 8.354 mils to 34.5157 across the county. The revenue that's proposed in this budget shows an increase of $719,213, or 5.192% increase over the estimated actual for this current year, 22-23. Largest increase is property tax of just over $594,000, which is directly attributed to the CPI and growth in taxable value and new properties entering the tax roll. Our state shared revenue, which consists of sales tax and that personal property reimbursement from the LCSA, our second largest type revenue, shows an increase of $16,607. Building permit fees, we show a decrease of $123,500, and that's just basically the nature of budgeting for the cyclical nature of the building department, permitting and things like that. Miscellaneous, just some various decreases of $11,000. The DDA is another fairly decent increase of just over almost $91,000, and that's because it includes the funding of the DPW equipment operator position of just over $86,000. The contribution from the library goes up about $3,000 just for inflationary increases in their contract with us. And charges for services is going up $107 for water wastewater, $35,000 for safety path and LDFA, and just under $4,400 for solid waste and local road. The next chart just summarizes basically putting our categories of revenue into smaller categories than what was on the previous sheet. Again, shows our largest type revenue of taxes and special assessments. It makes up 65% of our city revenues, and state shared revenues at 15.8%, and the rest of it rounded out between licenses, permits, charge for services, and transfers. The next chart shows a historical snapshot of our state shared revenue or sales tax revenue. We're showing or budgeting for an increase of $17,548 from what we anticipate coming in this year. The reason for that high amount in 21-22 was because of the retroactive payment we received once the revised census figures came in. So that's why we start to see an increase over that 2021 year, was directly related to our census increase. Okay, as far as expenditures, overall, we would show a decrease of $2.7 million or 15.7%. The most significant factor why that number is the way it is the contributions to other projects decreased by just under $3.6 million. Some of the larger changes, building department, up $104,524, which is basically staff request for half of a new position, and the building official cost that we're estimating in the budget for is directly related to permit revenue. In the information systems department, we have an increase of $40,390. That is mainly due to us reallocating GIS fees into one location instead of having it in multiple departments. And we recover that in a revenue type way, bringing that money back in to offset that cost. The finance department up $34,500. Again, that's half of the staff request for a clerical position that's shared with the building department. General operating down just over $78,000, and that's mainly contributed to HRA cost and a reduction in our MERS pension cost. The next slide continues expenditures. Another note is the fire department for $270,112. That is mostly related to 2 additional firefighter positions that were added during the course of this fiscal year and the clerical staff request for the next fiscal year. Police increase of $142,956, again staff request for 1 sergeant position and a resource officer position has been added into that budget. And then there were some other decreases in fringes and wages due to the multiple retirements of longer-term employees that we had in payroll. DPW department is up $221, and most of that is the additional full-time operator that's going to be funded by the DDA. We have to expense it there, and the revenue comes in on the revenue side to cover that cost of $86,000. And same with the project manager position. We expense $84,000 of that position, with $63,000 of that coming back in on a revenue side to offset that cost. And then the last one of note is $99,880 for the debt service pension, and that's just an increase in the debt payment principal based on the bond payment schedule. And then at the bottom, if we look at operational expense totals, in the first gray highlighted line, operational increased $867,452 or 7.03%. And then the transfers out went down 73% because of the reduced contributions to other projects and funds. We continue to include other post-employment benefit amount of $79,435 and a pension contribution of $178,944. And then we also have amortization payment or unfunded liability payment for the pension of $91,032. And that actually decreased substantially from our last actuary. The general fund reflects an estimated balance at the close of fiscal year 23-24 of $5,460,458 or 37.6%. The Downtown Development Authority continued to see new development and construction in the DDA area, which continues to allow sufficient funds to pay the debt payment, but also provide for a charge for services back to the city of a total of $248,175, and again, that includes funding for one full-time DPW operator. The Budget Stabilization Fund will reflect an estimated balance of $1,317,174, or 9.07%. This budget includes a proposal to have permanent full-time staff positions increased to 62 employees from 56 that were in the fiscal year 22-23 year. The 62 full-time positions, still when compared to our high of employment in 2003-2004, which was 65, still represents a 3.06% reduction. And of note, our population and infrastructure growth through those years has a direct impact on the demand for city services. The next screen is just for informational purposes of the historical full-time employment dating back to fiscal year 03-04 through the years compared to today. As far as solid waste collection, we are able to keep the recycling and solid waste fee at $167 this year, which is just a $2 increase over last year's rate of $165. Sewer rates will remain the same for the commodity portion based on usage of 32.70 per unit, and all of the other costs will also remain the same due to healthy cash reserves through our rate study and the ARPA funding for one of our large projects. Water utility rates will also remain the same this year at $41 per unit. And that again is healthy cash reserves that were realized in the study at looking at our rate structure this year. The residential sewer cap, sewer-only customers, industrial sewer-only customers will also remain the same. So no increase at all on water and sewer side for our customers. For the capital improvement plan, we propose $1,020,000 for the annual contribution, along with an additional contribution of $300,000 to fund specifically information systems for network upgrades and dark fiber to be ran for connection to remote sites. Our expenditure varies from year to year, while the annual contribution is averaged over the same 10-year period. Therefore, the expenditure side typically in some years will be much higher than the annual contribution. And this chart summarizes basically the $4,384,900 in proposed capital improvement and gives highlights of some of those departments. One of the largest one is Parks and Rec, because we did allocate for that West End Commons project of $1 million, and then also Todd Latin Civic Center park improvements out back by the library.
So going back to the beginning of the earlier part of the presentation, I believe it was page 8, where we talked about the largest decrease in our expenditures was roughly $600,000 from 2022-23. That's, you compare what we had in there at 3.897 that we have in here for this year, which is 300,000, and that's where the difference comes in. So that does take care of the largest portion of the change from year to year. The rest of the expenditure categories increased to reduce the overall reduction down to $2.7 million. If that makes sense. Sorry.
Oh, that's good. Thank you for clarifying it. Oh, went too far. As far as major road improvements, the budget consists of just under $1.6 million, which will include the final phase and completion of West Maple Road that's scheduled to start here fairly soon. Beck Road widening easement documents, some general repairs and pavement management. And we also have 3 tri-party projects that we have contributions in there for Wixom Road maintenance, Grand River, from Napier to Wixom Road, and Pontiac Trail culverts. Local road improvement budget will include $2,141,500 for pavement management and preservation. Loon Lake Road, Palmer, Hopkins, Courts of Highgate, and Cliffs of Loon Lake. Safety path will include $1,486,240 for Wixom Road north of Potter to Palmer, Wixom Road south of Pontiac Trail, the downtown sidewalk project, 12-mile, and some other various just maintenance around the city on the pathways. Wastewater improvements, we have $4,671,305, which includes the remainder of the clarifier recoats and install of a new clarifier, the solids handling system, a roof replacement, some modifications to our collection system, general repairs across the board for the wastewater system. Water improvements, just over $200,000, which funds meter replacements, some hydrant work, and our SCADA system, which is the control and monitoring system, and general repairs and replacement as we need them throughout the system. And that is all I have for highlights this evening. If anyone has any questions.
I've got a quick one, Marilyn. Going back to the water and wastewater rates. You know, we're not raising our rates because of our healthy cash reserves. Well, in years past, we never did that, and we kind of got in a sling for that. We shouldn't worry about that this year?
No, not at all. We did the complete rate study, and it was suggested that our cash reserves are healthy. We don't want to keep too high a cash reserves in those utility systems because it's just not the right thing to do. So that was the suggestion of our rate study, to forego that this year. And we'll see where we go next year, but we are in very good shape with our utilities.
All right, very good. Any other questions? Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Just one real quick one. On the expense side, you were talking about litigation and appeals increase because of the union contracts. Are all bargaining units contracts expiring the same year?
All but fire.
Yeah.
All but fire?
Yeah, fire over
Fire's
the
the year
next year.
following.
Year following. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Grella Fox.
Marilyn, as far as the budget stabilization fund, is there a recommended percentage that through the, I don't know if it's GASB or just the...
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, because budget stabilization technically is treated as general fund. We're able to keep it in a separate account and keep it in a separate fund. But technically, when your audit's done and your financial statements are issued, that's combined with your general fund. So it's basically, from a financial standpoint, it's viewed as general operating funds.
There's not a separate rainy day fund, I know sometimes it's called.
Yeah.
That has a separate percentage,
No.
recommended percentage.
No, it's combined all together. I mean, we keep it separate just to carve that out, but ultimately it's combined together for financial purposes in the end.
And what is that recommended percentage for?
Typically, they say, I mean, you can keep up into the 40% ranges for general fund. It's on the higher end, but it's acceptable.
Isn't there some type of range though for like 20 to something?
At
18
least,
to 22?
at least 15 to 20 is your low end.
Okay.
Yeah, at least, of your total expenditures.
I thought there was a range, but I couldn't.
Sure, sorry about that. Yep.
Anybody else? Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Stamper, just two things. On the revenue side, on page 8, we talked previously about favorable interest rates we have received. Is that included in operating revenue, or where is it? If so, which line would we see that in?
That would be in other. It's just going to be in other revenues.
I'm looking for other, I see miscellaneous income.
Sorry, it would be, I'm sorry, miscellaneous.
Okay, because it shows it going down 1%. But, okay, we can talk about that when we get into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's, within the budget, there'll be more
Yeah,
detail.
right.
And, yeah, there's a lot of items that go in this
But
one.
then
Yes.
summarizing both the income and the expense side, and I know council will be very happy to know that you won't have to hear me say, I mean, I know we're gonna get into the details, but I kept bringing up 3 million last year. This year, it looks balanced, the proposal.
Mhm.
Income's slightly higher than expense.
Yes.
I think, I mean, we'll get into the details next week, but it looks good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Just a quick one. First of all, did anybody, was there a pool on when 3 million would come up again? No, actually, kind of a spin-off of Councilman, or Councilperson Grundlin Fox's question about our budget stabilization fund. I knew it, yeah, I had the same question, and I guess we didn't, the percentage-wise, I thought there was this percentage that we were trying to get at, but it's more the general fund. And anyway, maybe this will help. What was, you know, a couple of years ago, we had a fairly robust budget stabilization fund, and we brought it down for good reasons and all, but what's the highest it's been in the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, roughly, if you can recall?
I do not recall.
Oh, that's okay.
I would have to look back at what the balance was.
Well, next week, we're meeting to go over all this stuff
Yes.
thoroughly, so maybe
Yep.
then.
Yep,
by then-
I'll make sure I bring that number with me.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
That's all.
Councilmember Bierman.
From my recollection, I think the highest it's been is right before we allocated a bunch of that money to.
I just added 3 million to this.
So, yeah, about 3 million more than what's in there now. My question was regarding not increasing water, our water and sewer rates. When is our, the next contract up with,
F&V?
no, for,
GFL?
yeah, to get, where we get our water?
Oh, GLWA.
Yeah. I know you say you Detroit water,
4 more years.
it's not Detroit.
It's 4 years. When did it start?
It was a 5-year contract, and we
Oh, so we got
did
4
that
years left.
last summer.
So our rates with them aren't going to be changing within the next year?
So their rates can't go up any more than 4% each year.
So I guess that was, if their rate goes up 4% next year, worst case, we're still gonna be fine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and when we do the rate study, that is actually put into that study, which when we go over budgets, you'll see that GLWA fee actually does increase in the budget each
I
fiscal
assume
year.
so from the news you've been hearing lately,
Yes,
but.
yeah, it does show the increase, and that's looked at to make sure that we are able to make these decisions.
So
Yep.
even if they go up as high as they can, we're gonna be fine.
Yes, yes.
Perfect. That's all that was my question. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All right, looking forward to April 18th. And with that, I got a motion, a second, to approve the submittal of the city manager's proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 budget and setting May 23rd, 2023 as the date of public hearing regarding the budget. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business number 2 is a recommendation to adopt the resolution of support for Michigan House Bill 5054 and to request the legislature of the state of Michigan to provide pension relief grants for communities with funding ratios above 60% in the 2023 state budget. Do I have a motion? I'll move.
Support.
Assistant City Manager Benson.
I'll actually defer to City Manager Brown. I wrote this one on his behalf, but I know this is a project he's very passionate about, knows a lot about.
Right, so the story started to break on the listserv for management folks in the business, and it was getting heavy discussion that this had occurred. And roughly, I'll summarize it, there was a House Bill 5054 that had 2 sets of monies that were going to be involved, $750 million for pension funds that were perceived to be underfunded at 60% or less than 60%. And there was an added funding source of $250 million that was going to be provided to reimburse or to help cover the costs for communities that were funded at 60+%, right? So there's general evaluations as to the funding level of pension obligations. and there was 2 different groups, say either lower than 60% or 60% and above. The funding source for the $250 million or for the 60+% communities ended up on the floor when the bill was dropped as to how this was going to be approached, and instead it was just included in the state budget when the state budget was passed. So they included the $750 million, but they did not include the $250 million. Wixom is one of those communities with a 60+% funding amount on our pension obligations as well as our OPEB obligations. And that's because we took some difficult steps and decided to make sacrifices in other areas to bond for our pension obligations and to bond for our OPEB or other post-employment benefit obligations. We made those sacrifices. Other communities made similar sacrifices. There are other things that you do in most cases too, to allow greater contributions to your pension obligations if you don't bond and things like that. So we felt, and many others in business felt, that was not fair nor appropriate to drop that $250 million. We started to talk on the listserv about that and came up with an approach to start to lobby for that to be put into the state budget. So the result of that is this report that's put before you today, where we're asking for the City Council to adopt a resolution in support of asking the state to add that $250 million back into the state budget, allowing for communities that made other sacrifices to put themselves in a better financial position to be reimbursed at a lesser amount with that $250 million funding source and have it allocated amongst the communities. So that's, roughly speaking, the Reader's Digest version of why we're asking for your resolution of support today. We're going to be providing letters to state senators and state representatives and governor's office and everything else on this as well to communicate why we're doing this, and then provide the resolution as well if council supports it.
Deputy Mayor Resnick? Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is one case where, being fiscally responsible, I remember the days back in 2008, 2009 when we had these discussions with Joe Heffernan. We were doing the audit, and the best thing to do at that time was to bond, right? And I remember him telling stories about how many communities were at 0% at that time, and many municipalities went into receivership. So I strongly support this. It's a shame that it got overlooked, and any help that we can give to. I'll go to Lansing too. I get passionate about it.
We appreciate that. Might take you up on it.
All right. Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. I also support this, quite strongly. I'm glad you're on top of this, City Manager Brown. Another question here. The number of communities that you have kind of, as a part of this. You can just, you don't have to list them all or anything, but you give me a couple. How much weight do we have? How many communities do we have kind of, backing this up?
I'm going to defer to Drew on that detail.
Oh, that's fine.
I couldn't give you the exact number. I know our good friends over in Auburn Hills are they're the local piece that we've been working with the closest.
Okay.
But it's communities across the state, everywhere from Stanton, Sparta, Fremont. I mean,
there's a healthy number on it, and there's some decent sized cities in there. I'm sure
I would put the number probably in the 40s that signed up to be part of the email communication of putting this information together and going to council.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, that should help get some attention, when this gets to where it's going. Okay.
And I want to say thank you to the people that were involved on the listserv and did a lot of the work on this in terms of drafting perspective language and providing talking points and things like that. There were a lot of people that were heavily involved with it and did some great work in this regard to make sure that we could have our voices heard on this at least. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, I say, we have a little meeting with with our representative next week. Maybe we'll mention it, buzz it in her ear while we're there too.
Sounds like a great plan.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councilmember Gacho.
Thank you. I wanted to, just get some insight, being that we're supporting a bill that was voted and then kind of circumvented with appropriations. It seems like Wixom would benefit most under the additional uses clauses of this, where we can make principal payments on our bonds that we did issue to help cover this. use matching, or use it to meet matching fund requirements for infrastructure investments. Am I kind of envisioning how it would help us best, or, because we're already significantly invested and funded, we won't need that much more to hit the 100% marks. Anything else? It looked like there's a 5% cap per municipality on the total, so 250 million or whatever would get passed eventually. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, given that ultimately now they're using a different process to move this money forward, what the program will look like, we couldn't say for sure. So what you're eligible to use it for, I couldn't guarantee you. But whether it's, you listed most of the things that we would look at. You know, the other thing you can do, I mean, so we're 98% funded on pension bonds, but our pension liability, but you can be over 100%. So at a minimum, your minimum option is to put that towards that and get over 100%, because as we know, the valuation of your assets can fluctuate over time.
Right, and then there's also the additional contributions that maybe would be deferred in that case if that were to happen as well. So I agree with Drew that you know, the language that was in the bill can be a little bit of a guidance for us, but you can't really say what the ultimate guidance is going to come from the state on it when it's done in appropriations.
Yeah, it just struck my mind as being important if we're advocating that that bill be voted on again, that all of those still be in there, and not just, hey, this goes toward 100% funding or above, because I think the city would benefit in using the funds in another manner in some cases. I mean, obviously getting us above 100 is nice, but I think when I did the math, it was like 15 million would be our portion at the 5% cap, and 250 million. I don't know that we need to pour that much into the benefits versus we have roads and other things that need to be taken care of. So, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Grellin Fox.
Thank you, Mayor. Along those same lines, is the intent to, if we were successful, or the bill is successful, maybe I should say, is the intent to go ahead and put some of that money into towards our regular pension? I know we have the bond payment, but then we have the normal costs. But if you have to put some of that money towards that normal cost as well?
Yeah, subject to what the guidance is, yeah, that's a possible use of it for sure. Right, it's just we wait to see what comes along with it, if you will, what strings are attached to it, what stipulations are attached to it. We'd have to react to that.
I would just add on top of that as well, you know, the downside of doing the pension bond is that there are interest payments associated with that. So I think that would probably be one of the key areas we would look to offset is, you know, that was the cost to the city of dealing with our situation. So we would certainly push for a mechanism to
make that allowable. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, no other questions? I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to adopt the resolution of support for the Michigan House Bill 5054 and to request the legislature of the state of Michigan to provide pension relief grants for the communities with funding ratios above 60% in the 2023 state budget. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. New business number 3 is a recommendation to approve amendments to 2 intergovernmental lockup service agreements for 1 year each with the Village of Wolverine Lake and the City of Walled Lake, and authorize Mayor Patrick Legal to sign the amendments. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Very good. Chief Langmeyer?
Sorry. Hello again. Folks, what you have in front of you today is an amendment to our agreement with the City of Walled Lake and the City of Wolverine Lake. We did this just last year. It was for a 1 year agreement. This is again for our agreement for lockup services that we provide in those 2 places. This year's fee is a 4% increase over what we charged last year, so we're increasing it up to $94.53 per prisoner per day. That's the basic increase in our cost when we look at it. So we raised it up to 4%. Both Wolverine Lake and Walled Lake are in agreement with this rate as we stand right now. So we're asking for the council to approve it so that Mayor Beagle can sign the agreement.
Is there a reason why we only do a 1 year agreement? Because I know that was brought up at one of the other communities.
Yeah, the only reason this is a 1 year agreement is because of contract negotiations coming up. So I'm hopeful that next year we can come to you with a 3-year agreement with them, once we know what the contract languages are gonna read for our officers and command officers.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve amendments to the 2 intergovernmental lockup service agreements for 1 year each with the Village of Wolverine Lake and the City of Wall Lake, and authorize Mayor Patrick Beagle to sign the amendments. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. New business number 4 is a recommendation to approve an amendment to the Intergovernmental Police Records Management Service Agreement for 1 year with the Village of Wolverine Lake, and authorize Mayor Patrick Beagle to sign the amendment. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Very good.
Well, folks, along the same line, this is an amendment to our agreement with the Village of Wolverine Lake Records Services. We provide records management services for the Village of Wolverine Lake. The increase this year is a 3% increase over last year's cost, again, based upon our costs. Spread it across the board. They have already agreed to this fee. So we're going to just need for council approval to enact this amendment and have Mayor be able to sign it.
Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Langmeyer, this kind of applies to the one just before this. Not so much about the increase, but we just saw in the budget highlights, the police department and several other departments are asking for clerical staff ads. I assume the reason we do this for these other departments, and they pay us, but is because they don't have the staff to do that. And we apparently don't either, because we're going to add staff to cover these types of things. Shouldn't we just tell them, no, you guys go do your own and we won't add staff to our department? Is that a possibility, or?
The services that we're providing here for Wolverine Lake are very, very specialized. Managing all of the law enforcement records that are out there. So to be able to say that we wouldn't do this and be able to take our people from here and move them over, they're still doing their work over here, working on our stuff. This is a small amount of time that they're working with the Village of Wolverine Lake. It's a great partnership with them. It keeps them and us working together. Those partnerships are what we find work over time. So I wouldn't say that we could just tell them no and then not have to hire a clerk in the other department, because these people are very, very specialized in what they do.
Yeah, I understand. And then those are small departments too, so they're not, to have a staff member just to do that for them would be very expensive as well, and so they're paying us. I understand that. I was just thinking about it. You know, it's great to be independent. We are, but at some point, and not just the police and fire, but we need to be careful how much of our resources we're kind of donating. We're not making any money on this, right?
No.
It's just covering our costs.
Yeah, this is a study on what it costs our records people to handle what they have.
Yeah. Okay, just something to think about. I mean, 3% doesn't sound like a big increase either, considering what inflation did to us over the last year.
I agree with you. The way I understand it, a couple of years ago, there were very substantial increases in both of these contracts. Really, it's an expensive study, so that's why we kept it kind of the same. Last year was the same as an increase in cost. This year it's the same, just the same standard increase in cost. We can look at the other ones once we see what the contracts fall through next year.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the collaboration point of view, certainly, but when we start adding our labor resources, which are permanent, so to speak, it gets a little more than 3% a year at that point. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, very good. Thanks, Chief. I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve an amendment to the Intergovernmental Police Records Management Services Agreement for 1 year with the Village of Wolverine Lake, and authorize Mayor Patrick Beagle to sign the amendment. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. New business number 5 is a recommendation to approve the annual downtown flower contract with Landscape Designs and Associates LLC of Brighton, Michigan, in the amount of $46,289 from Downtown Flowers account number 248-729-956.016. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Very good. And with us tonight, we have the Executive Director of the Wixom DDA, Laura Cloutier.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This will be our 3rd year working with Landscape Design and Associates on the flower baskets that go on the light posts. We are not adding any new light posts, flower baskets this year, so they will still be in all the same locations as last year. The price has increased due to labor costs, gas, and the majority of this pricing is the maintenance for the flowers. The flowers themselves don't cost that much, it's the maintenance. They come out around 6 a.m. to water the flowers and fertilize the flowers every day. And that's primarily the cost.
Councilmember Berman?
The only question I have is what color are they going to be?
What color? I knew that was going to be the question tonight. We are going with reds, pinks, and whites this year.
Thank you.
Down with red. Down.
Give it a round.
After that comment, anybody else? Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Cloutier, what was I'm sorry I didn't look this up myself because I could have. But what did we pay last year? I seem to recall 32,000, but maybe it was.
It was closer to 39,000 last year.
39,000. So $7,000 divided by 39,000. What's that percent increase? 17.9% increase.
Yes.
We only charge 3% for other services for increases year over year. So 17.9 sounds like a lot. But that being said, I do support red, white, and pink more. Well,
The purple was really
purple,
nice.
it was nice, but it kind of got lost on the darkness of the posts and all. It was beautiful flowers, no question.
It did, but please understand, we get a scanned catalog, and they did not look that dark in the catalog, so.
I mean, 18% sounds shocking, but it's not really.
Unfortunately, this is the only company around that provides the high-quality service of coming out every day to water. Otherwise, we could hire an employee to water the.
You know, yeah, water rates went up, gas rates are going up, you know.
No, I get it, I get it. I just saw 3% on other things just a minute ago.
No, I completely understand.
18% sounds more what I'm used to seeing, and the flowers do look beautiful. They do a very good job.
Thank you.
So I'm not concerned about the company. It just, hopefully it doesn't go up 18% next year. Thank you.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. Being that in the budget, we do have an additional DDA employee essentially for DPW. Is that not something that they could be helping occasionally with, so the company's not coming out every day, and then we can bring that contract
I
down?
don't believe they have the equipment. They have a special truck with a barrel in the back that's filled with water that they water right from, and they pull the truck up right to the light post with the hose and the wand right off the bed of the truck. Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's how it is.
If I may just add one more piece to that discussion. It's both the capital side of, the tools that we need to do it. It's also actually a two-man operation. So, 2 people's time worth of doing it. What are the city employees' hourly rates compared to this particular vendor's? I don't know if they're different. That's something I guess we would have to look at, but all things considered, that might not be a significant savings. The other thing is related to the public works employee that would be funded via DDA funds. I would say we have a pretty full roster of kind of activities that will be associated with
that funding mechanism, it's not a single employee that would be dedicated to the DDA. It's really like that one person's worth of time. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into that. We can talk more during the budget session, but just to kind of reinforce, there are a lot of pieces that are part of that.
All right, yeah, I wasn't sure what the workload was going to be for whoever we're bringing on if that's approved. So it was just a thought because the hope would be, and we've talked about it on certain other projects, I think what's getting rebuilt by CAT, is it the excavator? Or
The backhoe?
Backhoe, okay, yeah. So just things that we can try to do in-house that cut down, because we always talk about inflation being up. If we can do it ourselves, then there's no inflation because our contracts are what they are with the employees. Thank you.
And this company's checking the brackets and deadheading, and they're doing other things too. They're not just going through water. Deputy Mayor Resnick?
I was just going to add that I watched them last year, and they deadhead once every 7 days.
Yes.
And they fertilize every day too.
Yes.
Which he's mixing that in, and it's quite an
It's
operation.
production, yeah.
Any other questions?
Mayor, real quick before we, in case there aren't any more questions, making a request that when you read the second version of the action here, add and authorize the mayor to sign the contract to that, please. That was left off the action.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I just cut somebody off like that.
No problem. Councilmember Smiley.
thank you, Mayor Beagle. Councilmember Sharp, just when you were doing that math, I couldn't keep up a little bit there. Did you factor in that there's been flower baskets added? Was that that 18% per basket?
No, last year, Ms. Cloutier said it was $39,000, and this year it's $46,000, so that's $7,000 over $39,000.
Same amount of baskets.
Same
Although
number.
I thought you added.
We added
Well,
last year,
you
we added, we're not adding
That's what
any
I'm
new
thinking.
this year.
Okay. All right, I don't know if I can support this if you don't do Mason Blue flowers.
I would love to do maize and blue because I am a Michonne fan.
I'll work on that. I'll go with it this time. Thanks, that's all I have.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve the annual downtown flower contract with Landscape Design and Associates LLC of Brighton, Michigan in the amount of $46,289 from Downtown Flowers, account number 248-729-956.016, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
New business number 6 is a recommendation to consider adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot to amend the city charter by replacing gender-specific terms with gender-neutral terms. So, very good. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we have, in the report, of sort of a rehashing of facts related to how this came about. We had a Charter Amendment Review Committee that was established in February of 2022, made up of council members Keenan Gottschall, Tia Gronlund Fox, and Robert Smiley. Since that time, the committee's met multiple times to talk about and have discussions about potential charter amendment activities for the city. And then council subsequently had discussions that occurred at multiple points in time as well in October of 22, November of 22, and February of 23. And at that February 14th, 2023 meeting, council directed the city administration to draw up some language in collaboration with the city attorney. City administration has dutifully been working towards that and working with Deborah Walling from Carol Rosati's shop as our city attorney. And Deborah Walling's here tonight for you to have run any questions by her or to ask for any kind of tweaks to language that might come out of this. Each one of these reports basically has a basic setup that talks about them in the basic background information again, so I'm only going to cover that once. But then there's in the middle section of the report where it talks about the details. This particular charter amendment has the following facts that would go along with it. Charter sections are various or numerous. There's multiple spots in the charter where male language was used that we're looking to replace with gender-neutral terms. The issue is that desire to replace those out-of-date terms with gender-neutral terms. And then the goal is to basically replace he, his, him, wherever they occur with a specific reference, which might be a title like city manager or mayor, or replace it with they, their, them in the language of the document. So we have a draft resolution that was prepared by Deborah Walling and other documents that are attached for your consideration tonight. And then I would defer to Deborah Walling if she wants to say anything in advance.
Hello again, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I think it's been about 10 months since I was here and we were initially talking about this. So I know there's been a lot of work done on it. And, you know, my goal was to try to get a concise, under 100 words, ballot question for you that is impartial and would pass muster with both the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office. And City Manager Brown mentions in his memo that I did submit these, you know, with the clear understanding the council hasn't seen them yet, but for informal review by the Attorney General's office, so that in case there's something glaringly wrong that I've put together, we know that, we can change that. I did get comments back from him Thursday last week, and he called me on Friday too to discuss more in detail. One of his biggest concerns that I'll get to in a moment, but for the most part, the matter before you right now, the gender specific, or the gender terminology, changing that, he really didn't have any concerns with that. And when I first got this assignment, I asked him, I keep referring to him, his name's George Elworth. He's been there for over 30 years. He's the guy, you know, that reviews all these, both for the governor and the Attorney General. But I knew that several other communities have already done this, so, you know, I asked him to send me some samples. So we had samples. Some communities just included one statement, as you're aware. You know, you could say that all the masculine terms really are gender neutral from here forward. But anyway, it was my direction that the council wanted the changes throughout, so that's what you see. And I apologize, your packet became over 100 pages more because of this, but you have to go through the entire charter, make those changes, so when it's published, there has to be a publication of what the changes will be if the amendment's adopted. So that's why you see the charter as it is now has to be published, and then if the changes are made. So, you know, both Steve and I have been through this. Mr. Elworth has spot checked it. I don't think I missed any, but that's one important thing that I'd like to know. If anybody has gone through it and we missed any references, that's important. And also, with respect to the ballot question itself, you know, if you'd like any tweaking, any changes to that sort of thing. But, and I might as well say it now since I've got the floor, Mr. Elworth called me because he said, you know, with his apologies, that he didn't tell me this, whatever, more than a month ago when I first sent these to him, and he's doing his informal comments. He called me because he said, you're intending to put all of these on a November ballot potentially. Do you realize that with the gender change amendment, the law would require us to go through an exponential number of scenarios with all of these amendments. If, for example, you know, any of the next three, one passes, one doesn't. Two pass, one doesn't. Or, you know, three pass, what would that look like when you're changing your entire charter? He strongly recommends that the council consider doing either just, you know, for a particular ballot, either the gender specific one or the other three at one time, but not all four, because we're going to have to publish all the variations, which he described as they would be exponential. If you know, hopefully I'm explaining that, but yeah, it's a requirement that, and even with our other ones, particularly with, well, I won't get into chapter, you know, I think we should talk about first whether or not there's a priority here, you know, to do the gender neutrality one first, and then the other three the next election kind of thing, or going forward and we want to do it all at once. So that was really my bombshell that, you know, he called me with on Friday, because he said, I said, well, what if we, you know, it seems kind of overkill to me in a lot of ways. He said, well, I have to recommend denial to the governor if you don't provide all these exponential scenarios of what could happen, depending on which ones pass and which ones don't. So, boy, sorry about that.
Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. I guess I'm not following what is meant by providing like all the exponential scenarios, because it's a yes or no vote from people. So I think every person that goes to vote understands yes from no, pass from fail. So I guess I'm not understanding what he is meaning by, I mean, I understand we have to publish all of these, but what is meant by the exponential side of things?
The exponential side, best of, as I understood, you know, and he and I talked about it for quite a while, because I didn't even fathom this would be their position, is that, yeah, the ballot questions would be 4 simple ballot questions, theoretically. However, we would need to publish all these various scenarios that could happen.
Just to try to elaborate a little bit more.
In full, like that full charter with all the various changes.
Yeah, what is the publishing requirement though? It's not a newspaper.
No, it's a verbatim.
But
wherever you do it, you could do it online, I think, these days. So.
And that's my point, is like, it's not like we're putting the spinal column back in business by doing this. Like,
it felt like it.
We're gonna, I mean, there's he calls it exponential. Truly, there's a limited number of opportunities, and really for whoever puts it online, it's a cut and paste job. Do you just check off this possibility and that possibility? It's not a million possibilities and scenarios. So
but it will be a lot of pages.
Online.
Right.
And online can have a lot of pages. So
it
that's
just be it won't just be a link, just so anybody thinks we can't just like, we'll have to publish it somewhere.
yeah. But it's not in print necessarily, I guess is my point.
Not in a newspaper necessarily, if your official notices are just online now, however you're doing those. I mean, your official publications, when you notice public hearings, and that's okay. When you're required to publish something, I didn't look what you're doing right now.
No, we post them online, we also publish them in a newspaper record. Either the Public Notice Weekly or Open Press. But we wouldn't have to publish the full text of each possible charter amendment in full in the Open Press. You're saying we have to make a copy of what the charter would look like in each scenario. There has to be a copy somewhere for people to observe if they'd like to. So whether that's
and
printed.
posted at every polling place, that's a requirement.
So we'd have to have like binders with each
Right.
scenario. Okay.
So let me try to put a finer point on it. I'm confused by this as well. In the exponential thing of it, I'm not following either, as much as Councilmember Gottschall mentioned. So I'm assuming that he's potentially talking about if we have this gender neutral language that touches on, you know, sections 2.2, 3.1, 3.8, et cetera, out to 16.2, 16.3, and 16.13. Those are the sections that would be affected if that particular item were approved.
No, I'm sorry. He's saying that's what I thought. I
Okay.
tried to argue that.
Right. Good, I appreciate that.
The entire charter, what it would look like if one gets adopted and one doesn't.
We'd
Right.
have to have.
And then that's the next thing that I wanted to get down to, right? So let's say we've got potentially 4 items up here. Let's say this one passes and number 8 that changes, no, let's not use number 8, let's do number 9. to allow city officers to be paid on a fee basis. So if that one passes and this one passes, we'd have to make the changes that were reflected in those and then publish the document. If it's the full charter, then we publish the full charter with those changes only. And if they were impacted on a same page, for example, I don't see that that increases what we have to publish, because it's either passed or it's not passed.
So I believe my understanding of what's being explained is we have to say if each proposal only is passed, so just gender terms and the other three fail, here's that version.
Right.
And then the gender terms and the appointee gap pass, here's that, and then gender terms and the fee basis pass. In reality, yes, it's cumbersome to publish all of those but it's not cumbersome to make them available to everyone to read. And I'm not entirely sure, I mean, how many people, when we're publishing it, it can be very clear what it will look like to everyone. It won't be left up to some great debate in people's minds that I can think of, well, what if the first one and the third one pass and I need to click on that one? People aren't idiots. And I think his rationale is people are idiots, so we have to spell it out for them. And so that's the recommending denial bit of it is a little agitating because he's not the Wixom voter. That, to me, is not his job. If the wording fits, and I think it was Berkeley or somebody recently in Oakland County did a handful of changes. I'd love to know if he forced them to do the same thing, because if not, then why us, number one. Number two, he's making it seem like somebody's gonna be pounding out on a typewriter and have this scroll when people show up at City Hall. It's not that way anymore. So I understand his issue, but I think at the next election, we have other things we need to address, like millage stuff. So I'd rather not separate these just because he doesn't want someone to do the work. I'd rather try to get it done, and if we need to argue with him, then we can do that. But yeah, I think we have bigger fish to fry in future elections, that we shouldn't separate these just because somebody said so.
Mayor, are you going to say something? I apologize.
No.
So if I can try to just clarify one more thing. I don't understand the exponential aspect of it either. I don't understand where you have to say if the first proposal passes and number 4 passes, we're going to have to publish a version that looks like that. I don't see that that's logical, and I don't see where that makes any sense. You have a proposal that says, shall we change the charter in this fashion? You have a version of it that's the way it is, and you have a version of it the way it will be if this item passes. That's that version. You have a second version for the second proposal, you have a third one for the third proposal, and you have a fourth one for the fourth proposal if there are 4 proposals.
Yeah.
You're not tying them into each other if that one passes and if that one passes, because the proposal says, if this passes, we're going to change this in the charter.
Yeah.
And that's all we have to
That's
publish.
kind of how I started, is people know pass from fail. They know how to separate, hey, I'm gonna vote for this person for president. It doesn't mean I voted for this person for school board too. They're different. You don't have to publish everything that way.
So to me, is he saying that we're gonna have to sit there and say, well, what if A and B and D pass?
That's exactly.
That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
I'm not sure maybe if he was confused that we're gonna ask people to vote on each instance of this, maybe? And so.
I sent him separate resolutions for each of them. Just what's in your packet.
And I do have an experience in another municipality where we had multiple charter amendments that were on a ballot at one time, and I don't remember that being an issue.
So, sorry.
He was there then, as you mentioned, because he's been here for 30 years.
Right.
So.
Should we table this for a week? So if we table it for a week, is it gonna throw a cog in the system where we won't have enough time to get it or should we table it so we can get a very clear understanding of what we're doing here before we do it?
Well, I would like your input as to the question, so if you have any tonight, then I can make those changes before it comes back to you, if that's possible.
Okay, Council Behrman, we'll go down here. They've got questions, and we'll come back to it.
I understand the idea of we had to put 16 versions on our website, and frankly, you make the one master one, you just go through and edit the changes, and if that's what they want, I guess we could do that. I'd rather personally just get it done and do all of it. I think why it's complicated is because our first one, which is changing the gender, encompasses the entire document. Correct me if I'm wrong, if we were just doing 4 individual ones and each of them changed 1 paragraph, it'd be a whole lot easier to put together the hypotheticals, but because the one change we're proposing changes all 40-some pages, that's why it's making it more complicated, correct?
Correct.
So basically, in a perfect world, you would do the gender neutral one on its own and then knock out the other ones on a separate election where you want to have 16 49-page proposals, correct?
Yes.
Okay. That being said, if we can do our 16 49-page proposals on our website and not have to buy an entire newspaper, I am fine moving forward with these as proposed, because I also think that our residents are going to understand, and I think the proposal, what they're asking for, is going to make it more confusing than helpful, but if that's what they want for it to be done, then so be it.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Yeah, and perhaps one thing that Mr. Ellsworth saw was our Chapter 16.1B, which covers what he had suggested, just one sentence saying the masculine refers to the feminine and neuter, and perhaps that's what he looked at. So one possible option might be to go forward with the other 3 and then hold this one off for some later date if it's that complex. Is that, did he bring that up? Because our 16.1B actually has that sentence, and it's still in it, even in the revision.
He did not bring that up specifically. He brought up the concept of just making the one change. You know, he didn't cite your 16, but it would be.
But it actually states that
I said it's in there, yeah.
I'm wondering if that's what might have happened as he was going through it. But again, that might be one suggestion, is if the other 3 are just one section, one paragraph.
No, I agree that it, it is a cut and paste job for me, or whoever's going to do it, to do all, but all of those will have to be certified and sent to him and to the governor, so he will have all that. We can do it. He just suggested strongly, in fact, his words was, make me the bad guy. I said, well, this is crazy, I've never heard of this. Anyway.
But going back to Ms. Walling's response to the initial question about whether to defer for now, I think that we can go ahead and have the conversation about it and get down to whether there's finer points as to the changes to any of the individual charter amendments, and you can make the decision when you want to table it for a future discussion, for a future decision, whatever, and we can try to seek out a conversation with a couple of people in the room with Mr. Ellsworth and see if we can clarify what exactly the issues are before we actually vote. But we do have time to meet the deadlines still, so the delay until the 25th would not be anything that would create any problems from a timing standpoint.
That's what I've got you.
Thank you. Kathy, what is the drop dead date? Not their preferred date, but the absolute last minute.
The charter amendments have to go to the governor and the state by June 15th and to Oakland County by August 15th.
Okay, thank you. Aside from the discussion that just happened based on your discussions, my only thought was if we added into the question or the changes, more so the changes than the question, this section 16.1B, that language about masculine applying to feminine and neuter is irrelevant if this passes. Should we also remove that bit of that sentence? Because it talks about singularity and plurality in there, but the second half of the sentence is these references to terms. We should just remove that as well.
That would be either an add-on to what we're doing here, or a separate item again, which makes it that much more complicated. On the Happy Tune side of things, if you left it in there and somehow we missed one item that's covered.
Yeah.
And
I would leave it.
yeah, I would say leaving it would be the appropriate move on that front.
Okay, that was my only thought in reviewing this particular one. Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor. You said something, way back when, that this Mr. Ellsworth was going to recommend to the Attorney General to deny this. If we deny this just regardless of what we do, even if we put out all these documents?
If we don't provide everything that's
Okay,
required
we're
in
willing
terms
to
of these
put up
scenarios.
all those exponential variations, which I think we figured out 16, right? As long as we're willing to do that, he'll be okay with us going forward.
Oh, in fact, he is okay with most of our language. He gave me some other informal comments that whenever we get to those questions, tweaks,
Okay.
but there was nothing with the gender neutrality question, unless.
I'm talking broadly, having all four of them.
No,
So we don't have to get into the idea of, well, what if we just did the three, like Deputy Mayor Resnick was suggesting, without, leaving, the gender neutral version for another time. We have a few others that we thought, well, we don't want to put too many up, and it turns out 4 is too many, but it sounds like it's mostly because of that first one is so, the whole document.
The whole document.
That's kind of gumming up the rest of the works. So worst case scenario, we do the 3 without the gender, we get those done, bump the others to another time. But if we put up all the documents and we jump through whatever hoops that are necessary, we can do this.
We can do it.
Okay, then I say we keep doing it.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox.
That actually answered my question.
Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I support going whatever it takes. It's just cut and paste on a computer. I'm sure we can figure out printing, and we'll find out how serious Mr. Ellsworth is when he gets 16 40-page documents he's got to go through. And exponential means 2 to the 4th power. That's how you get to 16. But I did have an item in the first item number 6. Is that the gender specific? There's the term manpower several times in there. Is that an issue or not? It's somewhere else, and I just happened to see it in the charter as I was going through. I don't know. Is that it? That's a problem? Yeah. I mean, that's I don't know what
I
to
just
say.
heard that brought up in a different context, but I don't think it's a context. It's an issue here as far as I'm concerned.
I'm not sure all council agrees with you.
But I'm just stating what I understand it to be. That hasn't been something that's been addressed from we need to eradicate that.
I was just saying that
public use.
That word was in somewhere in the charter. I just happened to see it today when I was flipping through the 40 pages.
I think if you start to go down that issue, you're going to find what about this word, what about that word, and I'm not smart enough to come up with all the possible words. It could potentially troublesome, I guess. So.
Our attorney asked for suggestions, and that's one of them. So
I can do a word check to see how that pops up, to see if there is another word. I don't know. I didn't catch the manpower at all.
I can't remember where it was. I'll have to go find it.
Okay,
thank
so again,
I support keep going.
keep going. That's okay. So then, do we have any questions or comments on new business number 6 on anything here? Because we're going to go forward with and provide 16 versions and all that. Correct?
Apparently, potentially.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none, I've got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to consider adoption of the resolution to place on a charter amendment on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot to amend the city charter by replacing gender-specific terms with general neutral terms. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good. Moving on to new business number 7 is a recommendation to consider adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot to amend Chapter 4.11.e to change the term of office for appointees to council positions to the unexpired term of the position. Do I have a motion? City Manager Brown?
So going to the middle portion of the document again, this charter amendment as directed by council was summarized as Charter Section 4.11E. The issue being the term of office for council appointees is stated in a way that creates a gap between a council appointee's term of office and the start of the newly elected council member's term. So the way that it reads currently, it leaves us with a gap between when an election is completed and when the newly elected person takes office, wherein we again had a vacancy because of the way the charter was worded. The goal of the amendment is to eliminate that gap by stating the council appointee's term of office is the balance of the unexpired term, as opposed to referring to the Monday after the election and those kind of things. So that's the general purpose of it. The city attorney has prepared a draft resolution, and this one's a little simpler because it's got the proposed ballot language, the existing charter language, and then the proposed amendment to the charter language in red line, as well as the way it reads if it is passed. And then again, I defer to Ms. Walling if she's got anything she wants to add to this discussion up front.
But there was an informal comment, excuse me, from Mr. Elworth on this ballot question. He thought that the question itself, excuse me, if the explanatory caption was fine with him. He just thought, shall the amendment be adopted, should be the ballot question, since he thinks it's redundant the way I've kind of restated it again before as the question. So this one would change to the extent, same explanation paragraph, and just say, shall the amendment be adopted?
So instead of shall section 4.1, et cetera, shall this amendment be adopted?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Councilmember Garland Fox?
I agree with that. I thought it was, the first part even is a little long, and I could see how you could get lost in that. I mean, I understand what you were trying to do as far as make it as clear as possible, but I think that might be easier for people to just make it short and sweet.
And I agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just clean it.
Yep. Any other comments, questions? All right. Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to consider adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment on the November 7, 2023 general election ballot to amend Chapter 4.11.e to change the term of office for appointees to council positions to the unexpired term of the position. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
If I may, just a real quick point of clarification there. We left out a comma on currently, so does anybody have an issue with adding that in there? We're going to reword it that way. It's going to be currently comma.
No.
You don't need it so moved. That's the way you did it there, as far as I'm concerned, because we'll just have the attachment on there. So as long as you're comfortable with that clarification. I should have caught that earlier. I apologize. Just dawned on me.
Very good. New business number 8 is a recommendation to consider adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot to amend Chapter 4.11.e to require a formal city council process for appointments to city council positions. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Very good. Any comments?
So this one has a different wrinkle to it, other than the difference in terms of how it's described. This one, as far as we could tell when we went back and reviewed the tape, if you will, from the February 14th, 2023 council meeting, there was a lot of discussion. There was an ask to table until a future meeting. That was denied, and ultimately I don't believe we ever got direction from council to proceed with this one. I think the mayor made a summary comment at the end of the discussion that said we're going to have further discussion on this. We were pretty far deep in the process by the time that we really came to that conclusion that we didn't have the formal direction to do that.
It was the following meeting.
That's what I was wondering, and I couldn't find it, so if then we're good on that then. Okay, so, and I apologize because I did try to find that and I didn't. So if we have that, then we can forget about that, and I apologize for not being clear on that to begin with. That's taken care of then, and I'll check the minutes. I could have sworn we did, but we'll look tighter this time. But this one is specifically the section where it talks about what's being affected here. Again, it's Charter Section 4.11E again. There's a desire for more specificity as to how the City Council will fill a council vacancy. And the goal is to require a specific process to fill a council vacancy. And we've got the proposed ballot language, the existing charter language, as well as the language of the charter as it would look in red line and if it passes. So again, Ms. Walling, you have anything you want to add here?
Yes, a comma after currently again, we need in the explanatory caption, but same comment from Mr. Elworth to shorten the actual question. Shall this amendment be adopted instead of restating this again?
Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. I think the wording kind of summarizes at least what I had in mind and potentially the whole committee, but I won't speak for them. But it leaves open the actual process, whatever future city councils want to adopt for themselves, but it puts into writing in the charter that there has to be some application process. So it gives that wiggle room that I know that the council members were concerned about, but it also puts in the bit about that it will be application process to city council. So I think the wording did a good job of capturing that. Thank you.
Any questions? Comments? Councilmember Sharp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is not really about this one, but for some reason I got noticed the number $3,000 a few times in this version, and we changed that to $10,000, so I don't even think we're looking at the latest city charter. We need to be sure, page 36 specifically.
Oh, interesting.
Just so we don't start filing a bunch of stuff that's got an old version in there. So.
I used the one from Muni Code, so maybe it hasn't been updated.
Okay, just alerting you the process.
Okay.
We'll verify that because I thought that was updated, so I'll take a look.
Anybody else? All right. I have not supported this one from day one, and I'm not going to support it again tonight. I don't think there's an issue with the way we're doing things right now. We haven't had an issue, and I just can't see changing them just to make a change, so I will be voting no on this one. Any questions?
I guess, well.
Go ahead. Councilmember Smiley.
Yeah, I thought we voted this down doing this one. I'm going to vote no again as well. It seems a little awkward and odd to, we're going to do something, is what we're asking people to, vote. We're going to set up a little policy. We're not telling you what it is because we don't know what it is. And this seems strange. So I thought we already said we weren't going to do this.
Could reduce the number of prints.
It's right.
Anybody else? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to consider adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot to amend Chapter 4.11.e to require a formal city council process for appointments to city council positions. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No.
Mayor Beagle?
No.
Deputy Mayor Resnick?
No.
Councilmember Behrman?
Yes.
Councilmember Gatchel?
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlin Fox?
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp?
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley?
No.
Four yes, 3 no.
And 3/5 is required, which puts you at 5, so that would fail.
Moving on to new business number 9 is a recommendation to consider adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot to amend Chapter 6.11.b to allow city officers to be paid on a fee basis. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Very good. City Manager Brown?
This one goes back to the usual. The charter section is 6.11B. The issue is the city charter prohibits paying officers on a fee basis. While the city does utilize non-full-time employees, i.e. contractors such as positions like city planner and city attorney, that must be paid on a fee basis. The goal of the amendment is just to allow payment of city officers on a fee basis consistent with our practice and that many other communities across the state and the nation. City attorneys prepared a draft resolution with the proposed ballot language, the existing charter language, the proposed amendment to the charter language in red line, and also what the charter language would look like if the charter amendment passes. And then I defer to Ms. Wong.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions for the council on this as far as preference. I didn't use the word currently in this explanatory caption. I don't know if there's there's any thought that maybe I should or shouldn't put it there.
We've got it there.
Oh, you've got it. My copy doesn't have it.
It's even got a comma.
Yeah, it's got a comma this time. It's not the sharpest though.
Oh, you added
yeah, I did that
one.
myself.
Okay, all right. So I don't have that version.
I figured it out on that one. Sorry for
Okay. And Mr. Elworth's comments were not with the ballot question on this one, but in the text of the proposed change to the charter language, he asked the question, asked me to ask the council, if you look at the proposed change to the text in section 6.11B, where I've eliminated no and just put officers may be paid on a fee basis. He said, do you want to put the word part-time officers there, for clarity? Or would there ever be a time where a full-time officer would be paid on a fee basis? I don't know.
Councilmember Gatchel?
Thank you. So that kind of lines up slightly with what I had anticipated and what I made notes in here for, was the wording as it, like the actual changes are blanket for all officers being paid on a fee basis. My thoughts were more to amend it so that it states that any officer duties or positions being fulfilled by outside vendors can be paid on a fee basis. That way it separates the two. And so those still in-house cannot be paid fee basis. Those outside can be because they have to be. That's how the contracts work. So that was more how I was anticipating this coming across, and then I don't think we would have the issue where I think with the part-time, he's trying to get at the fact that it's outside vendors. So I think it's maybe better just to clarify that.
Could I suggest this language then? It would say, officers who are not full-time employees, or it's plural right now in the charter. Officers who are not full-time employees may be paid on a fee basis.
I would just say non-employees.
Non-employees, I would say.
Yeah, because even if somebody goes, under some situation, if a future officer position went to part-time, that would open them up. I want it to be more so that it's a non-employee, it's a third-party vendor, essentially.
So it would be officers who are not employees may be paid on it.
Under B?
Yeah.
Right. I think so.
Yeah.
He did have questions about some of the language that in the charter we're not proposing to change. Like, what does that mean? Like in B, for example, when it says this provision shall not apply to statutory fees. And with respect to C, he said, what is the charter talking about there? And I guess from what I thought from my experience, it's talking about if someone was paid by the city for jury duty, they have give that jury duty fee to the city because, you know, that's, I think, what it's talking about. We're not proposing to change any of it, but he said, well, see if they, you know, ask if they want to change any of that, to clarify it, or delete, or update, or any of that, too. I don't know if there's any thought on that.
For what it's worth, I had the same confusion on that language and really had conversations with Drew and had conversations with Ms. Walling about what are we talking about when we say any such fees, because I don't think it's very clear. But I also don't have a great idea for making it more clear, so.
Councilmember Graham Fox?
It is very confusing, I think, but my first question, do we have to use the word officer?
Well, it has a distinct meaning in your charter. You know, there are certain positions who are officers of the city.
Because I think that in itself is confusing. To use the word, people think officer, what are they talking, police officer? What does officer mean? So that's why I thought if we could just say non-employees of the city, but I mean, if you have to use the word officer, non-employee officers, I guess. But to me, it's, that word officer could be, I could see how it could be confusing.
Right, and this section of your charter is about how you compensate your employees and your officers and who sets your salaries. So it is distinct to these certain individuals with titles.
So we can change that. And then the other C, I think is also confusing. If there's a way that we could rewrite that just to make it clear, because I don't think it's clear.
Well, I liken that part to any kind of award or of fees to an employee for their services, or, I mean, it's easier in the context of the city attorney wins a big case, the court awards attorney fees, and those belong to the city. You know, they don't go to the attorney.
Right.
Right. That's what this paragraph is
Be
saying.
paid to the finance director, that.
Right.
I can see how people could get confused by that.
Oh,
Well,
change
being
that to the
finance,
city.
You know, exactly.
Shall be collected by the finance director?
Collected by the finance director, maybe that.
Or collected for the city by the finance director, I don't know.
I did, just about the officer question, chapter 16 actually defines officer. The word officer shall include the mayor and members of city council, the appointed administrative officers, and the city attorney. Just since we were talking about it.
Councilmember Behrman?
Thank you. I guess my question on this one is, my memory serves me right now, we're going back about a year. This wasn't a provision that the committee thought necessarily from the beginning needed to be changed. This was a provision that we were recommended by our city attorney that needed to be changed.
It was inconsistent with your current practice.
The committee determined that was one where we probably weren't following our own charter, and we did add it to the list, and the attorney agreed that we probably weren't following it with them and possibly the assessing situation.
So I guess my question on that, I was just kind of confused at why it was coming back to what we want changed, because I thought the reason why this was being recommended to be changed because you gave us the recommendation to change it.
Well, when we went through this a year ago,
Yeah.
that was something where there appeared to be a conflict with current practice.
So I guess I'd be fine with whatever language you think is going to make us follow our current practice.
And I tried to do the minimal changes to address just that issue, but I only point out the confusion that other members have seen too with some of these other provisions. I didn't go there, just mentioning it.
Gotcha.
One of the things that Ms. Walling and I spoke about was eliminating C in its entirety because it was so confusion-held. But in the end, she decided, and I think maybe rightfully so, that it probably was best not to eliminate it. But there is still a problem of it being a little tough to follow.
has a purpose if there are, some kinds of awards or commissions, given to an employee, they don't belong to the employee, they belong to the city. And that's really what it's trying to say. Or the officer, or the employee.
I just thought of something that gets a little bit more wordy, but it's not that much more wordy. Any such fees, commissions, and other compensation received from other parties while performing services to the city? Something akin to that, would that address it? Because we like your example of jury duty, for example. I know that there are employers that if they pay you your wages, even if you get summoned to jury duty, then you shouldn't be getting the jury duty payment as a extra payment that day, and then they require people to turn over that jury duty pay.
Same with if the city reimburses your parking, but the court did too, you're supposed to give the city its money.
Right.
Councilor Gasso?
Thank you. B was really where the focus was when we were discussing it, so I would worry less about C. I mean, it's there for purpose. We might not use it very often, but I don't understand the point of worrying about it or changing it as much. I think just to clarify where we're at with the changes to B, the wording would be changed to non-employee, so there would be that separation, correct?
Officers that are not employees is what we were suggesting to begin with, I think.
Right.
Unless, and that's an alternative.
Unless
I'm
you
just saying
want
that's
to
what
put
we were talking about.
non-employees.
You could also say non-employee
Well,
officers.
So it used to read, officers shall not be, no officer shall be paid on a fee basis. And then I think it just becomes comma, unless duty is being filled by non-employee party, something like that. I think we should maintain the bit that no officers shall be paid on a fee basis.
Unless?
And then here's the sole exception.
Okay. I see that. Unless
Services are provided by
office,
professional service or something?
the office, you probably want to make the officer singular too. Unless the officer is not an employee.
I don't want to
make officers.
Yeah, I guess it shouldn't be too complicated because I don't want to get into a position where we're hiring city managers on a fee basis situation. I had even thought at one point we list out the officer roles they can fulfill that would apply, but I think that's getting even a little bit too complicated.
If you say unless the officer services are not performed by an employee or something akin to that, I'm not sure what your final language is going to be, that would open it up to other officers not being employees, certainly, and that's fine. It would just still be at council's discretion whether they do that or not. And the thought did cross my mind that for such as my position, hypothetically, it could be done that way as well if you ever came to that conclusion.
Do we have any other questions? So we're good with this one?
Is there consensus that then instead of the change to, that we first discussed, it would be no officer shall be paid on a fee basis unless the office is served by someone who is not an employee?
It gets a little wordy there.
Can we just say non-employee vendor or non-employee party?
Unless the office is
non-employee,
non-employee,
performed, I don't know.
Unless services are provided by a non-employee?
Yeah.
So that's,
Good.
that would still leave the door open to basically outsource everybody. We could outsource the clerk, outsource the city manager, outsource the. That's what we want, make that possible.
I guess. Sorry. The bigger thing for me was the original change just says officers may be paid on a fee basis. If we're gonna go to the non-employee, that's why I like the vendor route or something, because that is clear that that's a company or some outside consultant. If we need to list the specific positions, then I'm comfortable with that as well, because it shouldn't be every position, it should just be those that are currently apply, assessor and attorney.
Unless services are provided on a contract basis?
I just, like, there's so many iterations of this where you could become not a city manager, but a city management consultant.
Right.
And then inflation goes up 17% every year. No?
Right.
Well, then it goes out to bid, right?
But I think we can maybe then just state those two positions to clarify, because that's really what we run amok of right now.
I will say, I don't think it's the best idea to limit it to specific positions, because in the future, you may limit yourself from a scenario you may want.
And then you have to do another amendment.
20 years ago, the city may have never thought that they would have a contracted building department, as an example, but, you know, things changed. I think leaving yourself open for scenarios that don't exist today could be possible in the future is a better idea.
Options are good, I guess. Summary.
Contractual services.
Councilmember Brown Fox.
Well, that brings up a good point. So what if something happened and Steve, you move on?
Right.
And we hire someone just as a temporary basis while we're looking for a permanent city manager.
Right.
Or whatever, I guess it could be finance, it could be anything, but I've seen those circumstances. So that would be that type of scenario, right? So I agree, we probably don't want to limit ourselves.
Yeah, and that's the exact hypothetical that I thought of, actually. You know, there are interim city managers get hired, and then they got to be hired on a pay basis, whereas if you did it on a contractual basis, there could be, you know, Steve Brown, city manager associates, who comes in and will do work for you. It could be Steve, it could be John, it could be Mary, whoever.
So we
that
don't
comes
want
in
to
and
tie
does
our
the work.
hands, I
Right.
would think.
So that would allow that circumstance, correct, I think. That's where I think you want to leave the language open, not spell out specific offices, because then, as Drew mentioned, I think it's a good point, you know, who would have thought we wouldn't have an assessor? Instead, we're contracting with Oakland County. We've always had an assessor up until a certain point in time, and then you don't.
So would it be better then to say contracted? I guess I don't know
That's
if I want to say
an
employees,
option,
but
an alternative.
Contractors?
I personally, I think, contractual services.
Yeah.
Cleaners?
Unless provided by a contractual service.
Unless the duties are provided by,
Under contract or through a contract?
through
Contractually.
contractuals, unless the duties are.
How long is the question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Your employee. Right. Vendor? It's hard to say.
Okay. So we're clear with this one now?
So it's going to say contractual services we land on?
Okay, I had vendor was, I thought, I heard
Vendor's
vendor was
better.
the last one.
Whatever council prefers, I guess.
I think through
Contract.
contractual services, is that what you're thinking? Unless the duties are provided through contractual services.
Yep.
Or-
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's good. All right, I see no other questions, so I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to consider adoption of a resolution to place a charter amendment on the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot to amend Chapter 6.11.b to allow city officers to be paid on a fee basis. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. And with that, that concludes the business portion of tonight's meeting. We'll move on to the second call to the public. I'll read those rules again. The public shall address the council during the call of the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council, and all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the second call to the public tonight? Step on up, state your name and address, and what's on your mind.
You don't want to know everything on my mind. Scott Peterson, address 1425 Wren Street, here in Wixom. First of all, I just want to comment, I was pleased to hear that you were not going to increase water rates or sewer rates because there was some excess money in the budget. I think overall the city residents will be happy about that. So on behalf of the people I know anyway, I'm thanking you for that, and for myself too. Second thing was, and I guess I'm kind of coming into this so I don't totally understand it, but it seemed to me that the gender neutral terms is causing there was more time spent on that than was spent on almost the whole rest of the meeting tonight. Was this something that was, maybe I can't get answered, but was this something that the council decided that they wanted to look at for a specific reason? Was it recommended that our charter is going to cause a problem legally because we didn't have it gender neutral? Because I'm thinking, unless there's a problem with it legally, it seems like a whole lot of complication to go through when, if it doesn't have to be done, and we already supposedly have a thing in there that says, if it seems to be male gender, it's not, or whatever, it's neutral or whatever, it seems like it's already covered. So it was just a comment that I had as I was listening to all the discussions. So I don't know if you can answer that question for me or not.
We really can't.
Okay, can you answer it for me after the meeting?
Call me later.
Yep. I'll call. Okay, I'll call somebody or I'll talk to somebody after the meeting. Just curious about that, but it's just a comment. All right, thank you.
Yeah, and it'll be good if Mr. Smiley contacts you because he was on the committee too. So.
Okay.
Anybody else for the second call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the second call to the public and move on to city manager's comments. City Manager Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one item on here that we're putting some information out about, that being the Saturday, April 22nd, 11 a.m. Celebration of the grand opening of Phase 2 of the Michigan Airline Trail in downtown Wixom. There's going to be a reception immediately following at the Drafting Table Brewing Company. And Phase 2 in Wixom runs from Wixom Road, where Phase 1 ended, to Old Plank Road, where it is also goes forward from there in Milford Township and connects to the Huron Valley Trail ultimately. On a related note, the city's also recently completed an added path around City Hall and the police department, as well as a community center and the library. We're currently referring to that as the Civic Center Loop, for lack of a different name. And we thought that we would put it out there at this meeting and then also on our website to bring that up and point out to people that path exists. It's a great new amenity. We've provided an overhead depiction of where the route is and where it runs around those buildings. And then we're also announcing that we're looking for a permanent, cooler name than the Civic Center Pathway. And we put out a Google form request on the website and through email blast notifications and those kind of things, asking people to submit their ideas for that. And we're going to be putting out like a $50 gift card or something akin to that will be the prize for having your choice ultimately used for the new name of that new pathway, with the single caveat that you cannot win with Civic Center Loop as your choice, because we already came up with that one. So that's what we're looking to do, and that is something that's available. You can go to the website, wixomgov.org, and click on a related news item that will take you to information on the grand opening, again, which is on April 22nd, Saturday at 11 a.m., and also use the form there to submit an idea for a new name for what we're referring to right now as the Civic Center Loop.
So
It
that's
was-
a couple of things that we were going to cover, and that was all we had on.
It was real pleasing tonight when I pulled in the number of families and stuff that were already using that, so.
I think it's pretty popular, and we're going to try to do some additional public notice on that. We're talking about potentially a banner right there across Pontiac Trail that would point to the beginning of that trail, because it's pretty proximate to the trail. So it's different things that we're looking to do to get the word out better for people. It is pretty well used, and we want to make it as well used as possible, since we have a good amenity there for people to take advantage of and enjoy.
Assistant City Manager Benson, anything tonight?
Nope, I don't have anything specific for y'all.
He must have the over.
You must have already won.
I don't.
Council comments. I do want to acknowledge a special guest we have up here tonight, Kayla Berriman, who's celebrating her 10th birthday tonight. She wanted to sit up here with us, so welcome. Do you have any comments? Did you learn anything? If we hurry up, you still got time to go to the Dairy Queen.
I learned a lot about our city.
Good. Very good. Well, you're welcome back here anytime.
Happy birthday.
It's a big one. It's a 2-digit one.
Yeah.
It is a big
Councilmember Berman, council comments.
Well, I appreciate you letting Kayla join us this evening. I think we've created a problem. My son did this 6 months ago for his birthday. You guys do remember I do have 5 children.
For now.
Even the 2-year-old tonight, she's like, "Can I come to the city council meeting?" I'm like, absolutely not. So I appreciate you letting her come and join since she did want to come. And I hope you enjoyed the 2 hours of your life staying up past your bedtime. 2 quick thank yous. One to all of our staff that did the Wixom egg hunt. My children, all 5 of them really enjoyed it. Did you enjoy the egg hunt?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did. Really good turnout this year. It sold out like 10 minutes after it opened. So that's awesome to see that many families that came out. And second, thank you to our DPW department that took care of my complaint a few meetings ago about Maple and Wixom Road. That corner looks a whole lot nicer for a few weeks until somebody hits it again, but I appreciate that.
Good. Councilmember Gatchel.
Thank you. To answer our residents' question, because it isn't a secret, the council put a few members, myself, Ms. Gremlin Fox, and Mr. Smiley, on a charter amendment committee to review the entire charter and come up with things that just need general updating and things that have fallen out of practice. As the fee basis discussion went, right now we pay certain positions on a fee basis, like our city attorney, because they're no longer in-house, but the charter says we have to pay them not by fee basis, so that doesn't match up. So in going through this, one of the things that became clear is he and him is used for every single thing, even when it refers to like the mayor. It doesn't say the mayor, it says he shall sign this, stuff like that. Or when we're talking about homeowners and how we address things, it says he shall do this. So this being written in 1987 and past then, we now understand that women can run for mayor or own homes, that kind of stuff. And so it was more just a change to make everything more current with the present and how we view things. So it wasn't necessarily a legal issue where we were going to get sued. It's just when you read it, it seems outdated. And so that was simply where it came from, as the majority of us felt like, let's address this, because it became more complicated tonight, but when we got started, it wasn't that complicated. So you caught it for the tail end, which was the crazy bit of it. But when we got in it, it was just very much so, hey, wherever it says he, let's just make that more of a plural or inclusive term. So it wasn't anything crazy with us getting sued that caused it. So I hope that answers your question on that front. My official name for the trailway shall be Fountain Walk, just to really confuse people. So we can do that as well. We'll have a lot of people looking for Novi come downtown, so that'll be great for DDA businesses. So, and our DDA executive director left, but we still have the chairman, so hopefully that'll be taken to heart, so.
Thank you, sir.
I think, so driving to an appointment today and driving down Potter Road, and Councilmember Sharp has brought it up before, I've talked to Mr. Sigma about it, it is a rumble strip at this point in certain sections, and I really, like, we go through the budget and we see that Loon Lake Road is proposed for the next fiscal year. I don't think that Potter Road has another 3 or 4 years in it in certain sections. And so one thing that's come up mostly when I bring it up is our road funding. And we just voted on a few things to put on the November ballot, and we still have some time. I would hope that we can really have a discussion and potentially vote on a ballot question to adjust our current road millage. We cannot waste any more time, I think. When we look at our roads, as Mr. Sigma has pointed out, we can't keep up with funding. Then we have projects like Maple Road come in nearly 50% more than we budgeted. That eats into next year's projects. We have got to get ahead of this, and letting the opportunity of the November election slide by again, and then we get it in next year, and maybe we vote on it, and so we can start collecting money the following year, it really hurts the city. We talked in our goal setting session about rebranding the city or branding the city, and right now, it's one of those things, curb appeal sells the most, and so when people pull into Wixom, we don't need a bright sign that says Wixom when the roads announce it for us right now. And that's the main issue, right? So let's improve the roads. And I think it would really behoove council and administration to have a full discussion and vote before the deadline for ballot questions comes up. I think we seriously need to do that. The final thing is just my disappointment with the one failed amendment today. I know some people changed their votes, which everyone's able to do. But I know in previous issues, when we've been discussing ballot proposals, it's been thrown out that we let the voters decide. We put the question from the voters and they decide, and that wasn't really applied tonight. And so I have an issue with that. I would hope that members who voted no will motion to reconsider at a later time, or it can be brought back up. Because I think it's really disappointing that there are council members that want to continue the current process of council doesn't necessarily get any information depending on who's running the show. And so again, not a comment on the current mayor at all, but as council members, we're not given a list of qualified applicants at all. We don't know who is interested in the position, and we can't discuss them. And I genuinely believe that every single person that's a qualified individual that is interested in the position should be considered. Everyone is due that consideration. And tonight's no votes essentially rob everyone of that. So that is a big disappointment to me, especially when I voted in good faith yes to put questions in front of voters before, whether I like them or not, and then we don't take it both ways. Thank you.
Councilmember Grundle Fox.
Nothing this evening, thank you, Mayor.
Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to second several Councilmember Gottschall's comments, especially regarding the surprise defeat of one of the amendments. Certainly different than we discussed a few weeks ago. I don't really understand the change of heart in some council members. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Smiley.
Wait, hold on a second. Legal path, submit. Okay. There. Who's going to be judging for that naming?
Oh, yeah, we'll have to make a committee. Yeah, we'll have to do a committee.
Is it DDA or administration or?
We'll bring it to council, we'll let you weigh in.
Oh, well, I'm sure to win now.
It'll be a 3-hour meeting.
No, the only thing I had was, I think that's fine. That path looks good. And a happy birthday to Kayla. Thanks for joining us tonight. We have our homework, so I can't wait to get home and dig into our budget and get ready for next Tuesday. That's all I got. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe just a comment on the defeat of the one ballot change proposal is that, you know, the current charter does say by majority of the remaining members of council, so I think that we have sufficient coverage for those sorts of situations that come up. And again, you know, we still have the coverage for the gender neutrality, and it sounds like it caused a lot of confusion at the state. So I'm glad you brought back those comments from the person who has to say so anyway, from Lansing. Also on the Civic Center Loop, also noticed a lot of people using it. It's great to see. I noticed that a lot of people use it with dogs. I was just curious if we put out the dog waste bag stations anywhere along the loop. Might not be a bad idea, because I saw 3 people today when I pulled in walking their dogs through there. Just a suggestion. And warm weather is on us now, so be very cognizant of the crosswalks, cyclists, and making your left turns, look both ways before you make the left turn.
And I just want to say thank you to Parks and Rec for another great Easter egg hunt. It was, like Councilmember Berman said, it sold out really quick, and everyone had a good time, great turnout, and looking forward to hitting the budget. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Good night, everybody.